Welcome back, and thanks very much for tuning to another 10x leadership video. If you've been following along at home and you've got yourself either a Myers-Briggs assessment or a 16personalities.com assessment and you're wondering what to do with it, this video is for you. And what I'm going to try and do is help you avoid 3 common mistakes I see that people make once they've got their personality profiles. So I'm going to quickly flash up the 3 most common problems that I see when people get their personality preference assessments on the screen. So the first one being that people mix up personality preference with their competence and their ability to do things. The second thing is that people usually think they have to then go out and recruit or have somebody with every single personality type in their team in order for a team to be successful. And then the third one is that people use their personality preference as an excuse for their behaviour, and that can include some poor behaviours as well. So I'll go through those in the course of this video. What I want to do first, though, just to help remind us, is look at, in this case, a Myers-Briggs personality preference table, and we can see here there are a number of 16 types of personalities, and that's made up of 4 different dimensions. And really what I want to do with this first example and looking at this document is just to remind you that this is a personality preference, which comes back to that first mistake I see. So this is only a preference. It doesn't mean that you can't do those other things. So if we have a look at the 4 dimensions, so you've got the E and the I, which is about, are you outwardly or inwardly focused? And really this is about where do you get your energy from, and what do you do to recharge? So for me, I'm an introvert. I'm not a massive introvert, but nevertheless, I know that in order for me to recharge, I need to spend a bit of time on my own to make sure that my batteries just get topped back up again. For extroverts, and especially strong extroverts, they would like spending time with other people, and that would, for them, that would be fantastic. That would be energizing. For me, it would be exhausting, and it's the last thing I want when I've already spent a lot of time wearing myself out doing a variety of things, including interacting with other people. So again, it doesn't mean that in my case that I can't be an extrovert. I absolutely can. It just means that my preference is not to be an extrovert, and also that my preference is when I'm tired and feeling run down, the best thing for me is to spend some time on my own and do some quiet things, not to spend time with others. But again, that doesn't mean that I can't. It doesn't mean that I'm not capable. It doesn't mean that I'm not good at those things either. The second dimension is about sensing and intuition. So as you can see there, the sensing is about concrete facts and details, practical applications, describing things in a sort of specific and literal way, whereas the intuition is more about the possibilities of things that could be, the bigger picture stuff, seeing how things connect, enjoying concepts and innovation, and perhaps describing things in a more sort of figurative, and it's got their more poetic way. And again, for me, I'm a strong intuitive, and that means for me that I constantly see connections between things and can try and pull things together. In fact, I don't even really have to put any effort into doing that. It's just a sort of innate natural ability. And you would, if the first problem that I talked about was true, that I could only do the things that my personality preference says I can do, I'd be no good at detail. But I am, and I do focus on detail. It's just, again, it's not my natural preference, and certainly not my natural preference when I'm under pressure and under stress. But again, doesn't mean that I can't do it. The third one is a thinking feeling dimension. So, thinking being logic and systems and justice and fairness, as it says there, and about being reasonable and level-headed. Those are some of the traits for people who have a thinking preference. And then a feeling preference is that decisions are based much more on values and feelings, and making sure that people's feelings are taken into account when decisions are made. And again, that doesn't mean that I can't do the feeling side of things, because I'm a strong T preference. In fact, the work that I do and the sort of leadership that I encourage is about tapping into that feeling side. It's tapping into the emotions. It's being aware of that, but also it's about the logic and the I suppose for me, efficiency of how to do things. And then the fourth dimension is about judging and perceiving. So the judging is more about rules that should be respected, making plans, sticking to those plans, not necessarily being spontaneous. And then the P is much more about leaving options open, seeing rules and deadlines as flexible. And often people with a P preference like to wait until the end before they do some work to deliver against a deadline, because up until then they haven't got the energy and the impetus to get going. Whereas judging people, J's, are much more likely to plan it and chip away at it as the days and weeks go by. And P's also like a bit more spontaneity in general. So as you can see, these are 4 dimensions that create the 16 personality types. As I say, it doesn't mean that you can't do all of those things. It just means that some of them are not your preference. And actually, I suppose also there might be a cost associated with some of them. And for me, there's certainly a sort of energy cost. If I'm doing things that aren't in my preference, sometimes it takes me more energy to do that. I suppose over the years I've learned to do all of these things and try and do all of these things well, which means that often I don't notice I'm doing them, and the lines between what's my preference and what am I good at are completely blurred. So leading on from that, then, the second issue or problem that I come across quite often is that people do think they need one of every type, every personality type, in order to have a high performing team. And that, hopefully you can already see that is simply not true. I mean, it'd be quite useful if you had that, but again, it's about preferences, it's not about ability. So the fact that you haven't got people of certain personality types doesn't mean that you can't have people within your team that can cover off those personality preferences and deliver things and think in those sorts of ways. So don't think you have to go off and recruit people. Don't think you have to test every single member of your team whether they want it or not. Don't think that if you've got a perceived, you've got a gap in your team, you haven't got all 16 preferences squared away and there isn't a tick against each of them, that's a problem. It isn't, and it doesn't need to be either. I say everyone can do all of these activities. It's just that it may not be their preference. And I suppose the other thing to point out is it depends what sort of team you've got as well, what sort of work you're trying to do. If you've got a team of people that need to do lots of logical things, so IT developers and coders, for example, you're most likely to have people that have a thinking preference, because they like logic and they like systems, and that's what you need in order to build applications and IT tools. So if you were trying to have a load of people with different personality preferences that didn't suit the work, then that wouldn't make sense either. The third point then, on the third problem, is about using your personality preference as a reason to behave in certain ways. And I suppose what I see a lot is people going, well, that's who I am, so everyone else is just going to have to sort themselves out and work around me. In my view, that isn't how you have a good team. That isn't how you operate effectively. That isn't how you have a high-performing team. High-performing teams have high-performing leaders who can flex and adjust to the situation, and can perform all of the things that they need to do in order to help that team operate. And the same applies for the individuals in that team as well. And simply saying that, this is who I am, everyone else is going to have to work around me, isn't useful, certainly isn't high performing, isn't productive, and is just going to irritate people. You've probably seen in your report there's often information in there about your communication style and things that are your strengths and things that are your areas for improvement or your weaknesses. And I suppose for me it links to another topic and another video on another day, which is about growth mindset. And personally I think there's so much benefit from having a growth mindset, that if you just sort of lock yourself down to these are the only things I can do because that's my preference, that's not going to get you anywhere. It's you might be okay for a while, but the world and organisations move on, and you need to be able to adapt and move with it. And if you just stick to the things that are your preferences, you're never going to experience different things. You're not going to grow. You're not going to benefit from looking at things in different ways. I'll probably do another video as well about, it's not just growth mindset, but there's a great book that I read many years ago called Flip It, about looking at things from different angles and different perspectives. And again, for me, that's a crucial element of being a really good leader. And if you remember back to the last video and the difference between management and leadership, management was about processes and systems and using people, I suppose, almost like tools to deliver things. And leadership is much more about making connections with individuals, helping them develop, helping them to grow, helping them to see that they can deliver things that perhaps they don't believe in themselves. And again, if you've got a fixed mindset and if you're not connecting with people, then you're not going to have those, you're not going to make those emotional connections with people, and you're not going to get all of those benefits that I've just described. So again, it's you're going to miss out all of those things if you just say, well, look, this is me, this is who I am, I'm not changing, and I'm not prepared to do the things that a personality assessment says I'm not, well, I was going to say not good at. It doesn't actually say that. It says that they are your preferences, and the things that aren't in your preference, funny old thing, are not your preferences, but doesn't mean that you can't do them. So have a really good look at your personality assessment, and my advice would be to have conversations with your team, if you've got a team, with colleagues, with friends, with your partner. Work out which of those things are true, which things really resonate, which things are you not sure about. But also, just because those are your preferences as I say, doesn't mean that you can't do those other things. So what is it that you're not good at? What is it that you want to work on, that you want to improve? How can you interact with others who are completely different preferences? And, you know, for me, this is about reading your own personality preference and really understanding it, but also having a look at all the other preferences as well and working your way through those and trying to work out and imagine how would you interact with those people. What would you need to do differently in order to connect with them and, you know, have that leadership connection? So please avoid those 3 mistakes that I've talked about. There's probably plenty of others I could have talked about as well, but those are the 3 most common ones. And as I say, really use the personality preference to understand yourself, not to use it as an excuse, but to better understand yourself so you can better understand others, including your team. I hope that's useful, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you very much.